Hey, what's up everybody? This is Charles. I want to welcome you guys to the conversation. So today the question is, will the Kawhi Leonard and Paul George experiment work in these coming playoffs? So that's what I want to get into this video today. So without going into a long story, we all know that the Clippers have had a pretty up and down season. Nevertheless, they've been able to maintain some level of, excellence by maintaining the number 3 seed in the Western Conference. Right now, as we're speaking, they have a 30-13 record in the Western Conference, and Kawhi Leonard has gone on this offensive tear where he scored, I think, 5 games in a row, he scored above 30. So one game he had 39, another game he had 30 points, another game he had 43 in 3 quarters in less than half an hour, which was a really eye-opening performance for me because in the previous video we did where I spoke about does Kawhi Leonard need to up his aggression on the offensive end, I was really surprised because I didn't know he had it in him to be able to drop 40 plus points in 3 quarters. It was just something that I didn't know he was able to do. Now, the reason for me saying that in that previous video, the reason was quite simple because he's only scored 40 points. He's only scored 40 points in a game only 6 times in his entire career. And if you think about that, it's quite astonishing because of a player of that caliber. It's surprising to know that he doesn't score that many points. Now, granted, he's had some 40-point games in the playoffs where it's been really critical. I think he's had about 3 40-point games in the playoffs. One with the San Antonio Spurs against the Memphis Grizzlies. I think he had another one against the Orlando Magic in the first round of the playoffs last year. And I don't remember the last time I don't remember the other time that he did it and the opponent that he faced. Nevertheless, he hasn't done it that much. So for him to do that, I was a bit surprised about it. Now, although this video is not about that, I'm just trying to give you guys, some context as we move forward. Now, the question is though, will the Kawhi Leonard and Paul George experiment work in the playoffs? Now, there are a number of reasons why I'm asking this question. So let's get into it right now. The first reason is we all know that Kawhi Leonard has a chronic history of continually taking off games and load managing. He rarely plays back-to-backs. And it's only up until recently, I'm talking within the last week, that I've been seeing him playing consecutive games because the Clippers have gone on this long road trip that they're on. So they need to pick up a lot of wins, and I think they need to get a lot of continuity. So you're going to see him probably play all of those games or very well the majority of those games. But due to his load managing, there's been times when, him and his running mate, Paul George, haven't been able to be on the court as much as you would like them to be. And it turns out that leading up to Christmas Day and the 10 losses that they had, they've only lost with, the Clippers have only lost with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard in the lineup 3 times. It's not like as if they've had a lot of losses, but due to Kawhi Leonard's load managing, they're not able to play as much on the court. Now, what's the issue with that? You may be watching, okay, he's managing his body. Obviously, we all know that this is what Kawhi Leonard does, so what's the big deal? The first thing is, you may be saying, well, this is what happened in Toronto last season, and you see the fruits of that labor, so what's the big deal? The only problem is, last season when he was traded to the Toronto Raptors from the San Antonio Spurs, he was able to go through a training camp with that team, okay? They were able to, bring him into their system, make him understand how they, with the different sets, teach him the offense, the defensive schemes, and all of these things. Build continuity with his teammates, get into a chemistry with them, get into a flow with them. Not just on the court, but off the court. This is why training camp is so pivotal. You get to understand your coaching staff and really work on some strategies as the season moves forward. Now, this previous training season, the off season, Paul George was coming off a shoulder surgery because of an injury he sustained last season. And that's the reason why his production in the playoffs last year dipped, which I'm going to get into a little bit later in this video. So because of that reason, it's not like as if, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard had this training camp, so they kind of understand each other's tendencies quite a bit. So even though they're not playing together as much in games, maybe they still have an understanding of how each other plays. But from what I've heard from a lot of sources around the league talking about the Clippers, around the league, let me just say that I don't work inside the NBA. I'm not a journalist or anything like this. Just what I've heard insiders in the NBA say, they've said that Paul George and Kawhi Leonard have yet to have a practice. And I think the only practice that they've had, they scrimmaged on the same team. That's as much as I've heard. Now, there are other situations with other players historically where some players don't practice because they're trying to save their bodies. Typically those players are a little bit older, so I think of Kobe, sometimes I think of LeBron. That was the case last season or 2 seasons ago when he was in Cleveland, and there was some rumblings about that when Isaiah Thomas was saying, hey, we don't practice. But that's something that LeBron and them were doing because LeBron had been with that team for a number of years, so everyone knew each other. This is kind of a new thing. Now, the reason why it's important is because these are the 2 main pieces that need to be able to develop some chemistry on the court. Now, let's talk about what Kawhi Leonard is doing this season thus far. Then we're going to look at what he did last season in the playoffs, and just make a projection to see how we think he's going, how he's going to perform. Because remember, we're trying to understand, do we think that this experiment will work in the playoffs? So for the season, Kawhi Leonard is averaging 26.9 points a game. He's getting you 7.3 rebounds and 5.1 assists. He's shooting close to 50% from the floor. He's shooting about 87% from the free throw line, and he's taking about 20 field goals per game. So his aggressiveness is there, and he seems to be doing pretty well. Last season he averaged, I believe it was 26.6 points a game. Now in the playoffs last season, Kawhi he played about 39 minutes a game. He shot 30. He scored 30.5 points a game. He shot 49% from the floor. He shot 38% from the three-point line. He shot 88% from the free throw line, and he got you 9 rebounds and 3.9 assists, 1 point and 1.7 steals. So his numbers were stellar, and we all know that he was able to go on a historic run with that team. Now, if we look at Paul George this season is averaging 23.5 points a game. He's getting you 6 rebounds a game and 3.7 assists. Last season in the playoffs, bear in mind he was dealing with a shoulder injury when he was with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Nevertheless, he played 40 minutes a game, got you 28.6 points a game. He shot 43.6% from the field. He made about 32% of his three-pointers, shot 81% from the free throw line, and got you 8.6 rebounds and 3.6 assists. So his numbers were pretty solid in the playoffs last season. He was able to do, really well, although the Oklahoma City did have a first-round exit, and he wasn't able to, that was it. And then from that point forward, he moved on to another team. Now, coming back to this present situation, the question then becomes, how will these 2 players mesh in the playoffs? Because remember, the Clippers are, they've implemented this philosophy of load managing, but the reason why Paul George is missing games is because of an injury he sustained with his ankle. So that's the reason why he's not playing. Typically, Paul George is going to play all of the games that he is available to play. If he is available, meaning healthy, he will play those games. And they asked him in one of the games where I think he scored 30 points when he was playing earlier in the season, and they asked him, what's the reason that Kawhi Leonard is not playing all of these games? And his answer was quite simple and straightforward. He essentially said Kawhi has a lingering injury. So it makes sense for him to continue with this process of, not playing back-to-backs. Whereas me, my injuries are just a hit and miss. They come and then they go, and then I'm still playing. It's not like as if I'm nursing, a lingering injury. So that's the reason why, Paul George generally plays when he's ready, whereas Kawhi Leonard won't play, not because he's particularly injured, but he may be nursing something that, quite frankly, I don't know, because I am not a member of the Los Angeles Clippers, and I'm not an NBA insider. I'm just giving you information that I hear from watching these sports debate shows, just like me and you, and reading about it online. So, looking into the playoffs, this is my prediction. I believe that Kawhi Leonard, as he did last season, is going to be able to take his offensive game to the next level. I think he's going to be averaging around 30 points a game in the playoffs. I think his shooting percentage is going to go up. I think his level of aggressiveness needs to go up, and the reason is quite simple. When I say aggressiveness, some people think I'm saying he needs to score a lot of points. Yes, in some cases, yes, because your team needs someone to generate offense, which is quite understandable. But the other reason is when you're more aggressive on the offensive end, you're also getting the other team in foul trouble. You're also creating playmaking opportunities because of your aggressiveness. If you're passive on the court, then these things kind of go away. If you're attacking the basket, getting the other team in foul situations, and just putting their defense in jeopardy, this all is to the benefit of your team. So I believe that he's going to take his game a tick above to where it is right now and take it to a completely different level in the playoffs and really become a playoff performer, because I get the impression that that seems to be Kawhi Leonard's entire philosophy. He seems to be a big game player. However, as I said earlier, he's been averaging above 35 points in the last 5 games, and he's been on an offensive tear, quite like something I haven't actually seen before. And I'm curious to see if he's going to be able to maintain that, especially when Paul George comes back, what his aggressiveness is going to look like on the court, because the Clippers need him to be aggressive, not just on offense, but especially as well on defense. I think when Paul George gets back, I think his play is going to go up. I think his defensive intensity is going to increase as well because of the stakes. I think because now he knows he's playing on a serious championship contender. It's no longer, a team that like a wild card team like the Oklahoma City Thunder were last year. Now he's on a contender where a lot of people are picking that team, his team, to win the NBA championship. I think that pressure is going to drive him. I don't think it's going to cause him to capitulate in any kind of way. Number one. Number two, because he has Kawhi Leonard, who's been there and done it before, I think he's going to be sort of a calming influence on him that's going to allow him to just be able to manage his nerves throughout the playoffs. Maybe when he may have a bad game or have some consecutive bad plays, to be able to get over it. I think the Clippers are going to mirror Kawhi Leonard's personality. He has a very stoic demeanor, so you never really quite know what he's thinking. And ultimately, my prediction is that this experiment will work. And you may be asking yourself, what the hell is your experiment you're talking about? My experiment is I'm picking the Clippers to go to the to represent the Western Conference in the NBA Finals. And I think Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are going to lead the way. And I think everything is going to work out for them in the long run. So what I want to know from you guys is, do you agree with me? Do you think that this experiment, with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard is going to work come playoff time? Or do you think something else is going to happen and is going to fall along the part, maybe due to injury or something else, maybe due to a lack of continuity, maybe they don't have chemistry together? Whatever you think it is, please let me know what your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. I really want to know what you guys think about this topic. Once again, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to be notified every time one of our newest videos comes out. Once again, this is Charles here from DreamersPro, wishing you guys an amazing day. Peace.